The Rise of Shadowblade is a story of Kael Draven, an unlikely hero with incredible power and even more incredible responsibility. And after spending the last 4 episodes training, building alliances, and narrowly escaping certain death, he and his companions are ready to take on the Empire and end the war once and for all. But today, on The Rise of Shadowblade, Episode 5, Sigil of Fate, they discover the location of the Eclipsed Sigil, but the Empire is watching. Last we saw our heroes, they had just made their way into the imperial city of Skardus. Now, despite the fact that this city was basically ground zero in the war effort, it wasn't really all that well defended, and after all, it was supposedly protected by the shield of the Emperor. But since the shield had been shattered last episode, it seemed like a ghost town. As they made their way through the desolate streets, Kael Draven and company were spotted by a pair of Imperial guards. They tried to hide, but the guards found them and demanded to know what they were doing there. But before anyone could do anything rash, a familiar voice cut through the tense silence. "Hold, Centurion. I believe these people have something to do with the shattering of the shield." It was Commander Marius, and he had a smug grin on his face. Before anyone could say anything, though, he motioned to the prisoners with a sweep of his hand, and the Centurions instantly understood. They released their prisoners and fell in step behind them. With their guide, Kael Draven and his companions were taken to the local magistrate's office. The magistrate, a fat man with a surprisingly sharp tongue, was extremely reluctant to hand over his prisoners, but Marius eventually convinced him that he needed to do his duty to the Empire, and so they were allowed to take their prisoners and depart. Along the way, Kael Draven couldn't help but ask about the strange behavior of the city's guards. According to Marius, the shield had been shattered only moments before the Imperial army had received orders to evacuate the city, and so no one was there to protect it. But that didn't sit right with Kael Draven. The Empire had known about the eclipse for weeks, if not months. So why now? Why let a few rogue mages shatter their greatest defense only to order the evacuation afterwards? Marius shrugged, saying it was none of their concern. But Kael Draven couldn't help but feel as though there was more to the story. Still, they had bigger fish to fry. And so they continued their march until they arrived at the Imperial Archives. According to legend, somewhere within its vast halls was a sigil of the eclipse, a magical relic left behind by the Moon Mother during the last invasion. With such a powerful artifact on their side, they would stand a much better chance of defeating the Empire. But of course, finding it would be easier said than done. The archives were huge, filled with thousands upon thousands of ancient scrolls. Sifting through them would take years, maybe even decades. But luckily, Marius knew exactly where to find what they were looking for. He led them through the winding corridors until they arrived at a heavily guarded vault. "This is it," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The Seal of Fate." Meanwhile, deep within the Imperial Palace, Grand Vizier Cassiodorus stood before the Emperor, his face pale and drawn. "My Emperor, you must be cautious," he said, his voice trembling. "The shield of Skards has been shattered. An army of rogues is at the gates." The Emperor, who had been tending to one of his many wounds, paused and looked up sharply. "What?" He jumped down from his dais, his eyes flashing with anger. "How can this be? My shield is the most powerful magical defense in all of Ethel. How could it have been shattered?" Cassiodorus bowed his head. "I don't know, my Emperor, but I am sending word to the armies to evacuate the city. We cannot hold out forever." "And what will become of you?" the Emperor asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I am sorry, my Emperor, but I am afraid I must seal my fate with my own blood and protect this city with my life," Cassiodorus said. The Emperor nodded slowly. "Very well, then it is settled. You shall defend the city with your life. And when you have failed, I hope that Erebos will show mercy on your soul." And with that, the Grand Vizier bowed his head and prepared to sacrifice himself. But before he could do anything, A voice echoed through the chamber. "Who said anything about sacrificing yourself, old man?" The Emperor and Cassiodorus turned to see who was speaking, and their eyes widened in surprise. Standing in the doorway was a tall, shadowy figure with a hood obscuring his face. Behind him stood two other rogues, both equally menacing. "What?" the Emperor stammered. "How did you get here? How did you break the shield?" The rogues didn't answer, but simply walked forward until they were standing before the Emperor. Kael Draven reached out a hand and touched the Emperor's shoulder. The Emperor flinched at the contact, but Kael Draven didn't seem to care. "Listen, old man. I know you're hurting, but it doesn't have to be this way. I want you to tell me where the Eclipsed Seal is, and I might be able to help you." Emperor Erebos struggled against Kael's hold, his eyes blazing with hatred. "Never," he spat. "You may have managed to shatter my shield, but you will never find the seal while I live to guide you." Kael Draven sighed. "Suit yourself, old man, but don't come crying to me when the Empire falls." And with that, he turned and walked away. Back in the archives, Marius was examining the Seal of Fate. It was an unassuming piece of metal, no bigger than a finger, but it pulsed with raw, magical power. As he held it in his hands, memories flooded his mind, memories of a time when the world was whole and the moon shone brightly in the night sky. Suddenly, the ground shook violently and the walls began to crumble. "What's happening?" Alara cried, clinging to Kael's arm for support. "I don't know," Kael Draven replied, his eyes wide with alarm. "But we need to get out of here." As they ran for the exit, they could hear the sound of heavy footsteps pounding the earth. Whatever was out there was big, very big. And as if to prove his point, the ceiling collapsed, revealing a giant, grotesque creature with skin like rotting flesh and eyes that burned with an unholy light. A troll. Trolls were some of the most powerful creatures in the world, known for their incredible strength and durability. And this one was huge, easily twice the size of an elephant. As the troll advanced, the party scattered, trying to put as much distance between themselves and the monster as possible. But it was relentless, smashing through the crumbling walls and pursuing them deeper into the archives. Kael Draven knew he couldn't outrun the creature forever, so he turned and drew his sword. "All right, everyone, it's time to fight." The battle was fierce, but it was clear that the troll was too powerful for them to defeat in a frontal assault. They needed a new strategy. Finally, Zara came up with a plan. She cast a spell that created a massive explosion, buying them a few precious moments to regroup. "We need to get inside the vault," she shouted over the din of battle. "The seal is in there somewhere." They fought their way to the vault and burst through the doors, collapsing in a heap on the other side. Just as the troll was about to charge through the door, however, the seal flared with light, creating a force field that prevented the creature from entering. And so it was that the party was saved once again, thanks to the intervention of the Moon Mother herself. Meanwhile, back in the throne room, Cassiferis had managed to calm the Emperor down and was patching up his wounds. "You must rest, my Emperor," he said gently. "You are not fit to lead with those wounds." "Very well," Erebos sighed, slumping down on his throne. "But keep watch. If those rogues lay another finger on my crown, I will have their heads." And so Cassius stayed by the Emperor's side, watching over him as he slept and hoping against hope that the Empire would survive the coming storm. And now you know what happened in Episode 5 of The Rise of Shadowblade. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for watching the 5th episode of The Rise of Shadowblade. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel even further, consider becoming a patron where you can watch each episode early and even suggest ideas for future videos. Until next time, this is your host. Keep watching.